What's up guys, my name is Ace, and a few days ago I made a jump spots video for you, and this was taking place on many of the maps in the game, but I couldn't fit all of the maps into one video. So it's time for part 2 here. I've got a bunch of other excellent jump spots to share with you guys that are going to help you get around the map more effectively, and in many cases counter those campers more effectively as well. But before we get into the new maps, I just wanted to show a spot that so many of you guys in the comment section of the last video were pointing out that I missed, and I was unaware of this spot. This is on Taraq in this middle building area right here. You can mantle out of the window and come onto this invisible ledge, and from this side you do sort of hit an invisible barrier. This is as far as you can go without falling off, but you can sort of cover a hardpoint area right there, and then if you want you can come this direction as well. You could just use this for cover or concealment more accurately, or you could even come all the way around like that, and now you're on this little ledge here, and you can even challenge people in this area. Now, of course, with this spot, you can't really properly control all your angles, and you are going to be exposing yourself no matter what. So I do consider this to be super situational. You may be able to pick off a couple unsuspecting kills, but I wouldn't recommend lingering here for long because you just are so exposed. And with that, let's move on to the maps that we haven't covered in the first episode, and the first one is Embassy. And with this, one of my favorite jump spots here is to jump across to this area right here, and then from here, we can jump into the second story window. This is something the enemies almost never see coming. I don't see anybody else ever using this, and it's an incredible way to take enemies off guard because they typically just expect you to come up through the stairs. But just a little tip that I found with this to improve your consistency with this jump, because it's actually a little easier said than done. If anything, you want to try to jump a little bit too short rather than too long with this jump. If you try to jump directly toward the window, a lot of times you end up overshooting it and you miss that ledge grab. Whereas if you jump a little shorter than you would normally expect, this is where you're going to see more consistency with grabbing that ledge and getting yourself into the window. As for the next thing I wanted to show for you guys, this one may seem a bit obvious to some of you, but it's more so just looking at the best way to get up into this second story. Not the only way. Of course, we can use the truck to get up to that area, or the ladder, of course, and there's also stairs inside the building. But instead of these more obvious methods that also expose you to more of the map, especially that corner as you're pushing in that area, I like to come to the front of this trailer, and from here, you're able to mantle directly onto the trailer and then across like this. This isn't like a mind-blowing jump spot or anything, it's just, in my experience, the best way to effectively control your angles while making it to the second story here, and I'm going to be doing this a whole lot more often than the other methods that I've just shown you. And unfortunately, that's all I got for Embassy, but let's move on to Farm 18, and right here, there's just a few fairly obvious jump spots that I wanted to show you guys to get into the second story of this building. Of course, you can jump from the crates up there. If you're in the mid-map area, you could potentially jump up like this if you'd like to. That one is pretty situational because you're typically pretty exposed there. Also, on this side, instead of taking the obvious route that I just showed right here, you could also jump on these crates, and from this, just jump across to this ledge, and there you go, you're in the second story, and that's not as often expected by people camping in this building. After that, looking at the mid-map area, coming through this doorway can often be very, very dangerous, and even just peeking this doorway can be very dangerous as well, primarily because of the people that will be chilling on top of that roof, just pre-aiming that doorway. Not only do they have a height advantage, they have a massive cover advantage over you as well, and you have no cover. So just so you're not going into that blind, a little check spot that I like to use is right here. Just jump up on this printer, and from this you can see on top of the roof. If you have a really accurate gun, you could even pick that person off and they likely wouldn't see it coming. But I more so just use this as a quick check spot as I'm navigating through the building. That way I at least know if somebody is chilling on top of that building or not before I expose my full body in the doorway. Now, on a somewhat similar note, if you do want to counter those people that are just chilling on the rooftop and you're all the way back on this side of the map, if you hop on top of this concrete right here, you get an incredible line of sight across to that rooftop, and they will never see this one coming. Of course, you will need quite an accurate gun to take them out consistently, but this is just an excellent and underrated method for killing those rooftop campers. And speaking of that rooftop, let's just look at the different methods to get up here. Of course, we have the ladder, we have this little jump spot here. Those are incredibly obvious. I'm sure every one of you already knew that. Also, you could jump onto the crate from here and jump across. I use that one quite often as I'm trying to get across there. However, the one that a lot of people still haven't picked up on yet, it actually took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realize I could do this. From the inside right here, you can actually just mantle up to the roof from there. And then of course from the other end of the building, you can find different ways to mantle up there as well. I just wanted to show mainly that method of getting up from the inside because, like I said, I don't think a lot of people are aware of this. And with that, let's move on to Hydro, and this map actually has a lot of different jump spots. And the first thing I wanted to point out is to do with this rooftop right here. I'm sure most of you have realized you can get up here and people will often be up here trying to hold you back into your spawn from this corner. So you definitely want to be aware of that spot and how to get up there. However, I more so wanted to show a counter to that spot, especially coming out of this spawn. This is going to help you break a spawn trap in this corner here, because they just don't normally expect this, and you get a great line of sight here. So you just have to hop on top of this lumber right here, and it gives you a nice clean line of sight over top of the wall. You can use this to directly kill enemies that are camping on that rooftop, or if you don't have a long-range gun, for instance, or an accurate gun, you could even just use this as a check spot to see if it's safe to push up and get around that corner. And this is a really practical spot that I'm going to be incorporating into my gameplay a lot now when I play on this map. As for the next spot, this one, again, may seem really obvious to a lot of you, but these rock formations, oftentimes in Call of Duty, you can't get on top of these. These are just meant to be barriers between lanes, but in this map, it's a different story. You can jump on top of these rocks, just in case you guys didn't know that. Additionally, in this area right here, you often get a little bit of a stalemate here because there's some key choke points on the map that people will just chill in, and you only have a couple different options to challenge them, either to the left or to the right. It turns out you actually have more options than that, and I really like using this, at least sometimes. It is situational, but if you simply get on top of the little bench, then you can mantle directly to the rooftop of this, and it actually controls the line of sight quite nicely from the people that are typically camping in those little choke point areas. And I just find that I'm very often taking those people off guard, since they're pre-aiming where they think I'm going to be coming around the corner to the left or to the right. Next, over on this side, just wanted to point out this little ledge here that you can run on, so you don't have to drop into the water, make a bunch of unnecessary noise, and then also be sort of locked into the water situation. Then, of course, in this building, just in case you haven't noticed, you can jump on this valve right here to get to the second story area here. That one is fairly obvious, but I don't see it used too often, so I just wanted to make sure I'm pointing it out. Then when we get to this back corner area of the map, if you try to go into this area here, you'll notice on the mini-map, that's not part of the map, and it will start the countdown to kill you. But if you're quick enough, you can just run right through that anyway, and this is an excellent way to flank within the direction of their spawn area there. And of course, you can use this the other way as well to maybe get out of that spawn without forcing yourself to go through the building. Then in this back spawn area, this is yet another one of those rock formations where, at least at first glance, I didn't think you'd be able to get on top of this. However, there's actually some clearly painted areas here with blue that show you the ledges that you can mantle to, and this is often a much better way to get out of this spawn area. Instead of staying low and moving through the choke points that enemies are often pre-aiming, I like finding ways to get up on top of these rocks, gain some height advantage there, as well as just some unpredictability while coming out of spawn. And this is a great way to break a potential spawn trap here, because enemies will often be just sort of chilling and trying to trap you from this side of the map. Then getting over to this building here, unfortunately, you can't jump on top of this little utility box for some reason to get onto the second story. It looks like you should be able to, but they don't let you do that for some reason. However, you can do it from the sides here. If you jump, you can catch a mantle on these, and from here you can get to the second story. So that just provides you with an alternative without having to go through the building to get up there. You can also use this one for a nice line of sight toward that spawn area to potentially kill people as they're coming out of that, but you are fairly exposed, so I wouldn't linger there for too long. Then from this second story, if you jump on the railing right here, you actually get a nice line of sight into a choke point over there, and that just gives you an alternative to challenge the people that will often be hanging out on that side trying to battle you on your side on the same floor. This is something they just don't normally see coming. Then getting over to this building here, these are some jump spots I'm using constantly in my gameplay. I hate using these doorways because it's so easy for enemies to lock these doorways down. So instead, if I'm coming from this direction, I usually like to jump up directly like this. I'm often taking enemies off guard that are just sitting there pre-aiming the doorway. We see a really similar story on the other side of the map as well. Instead of taking the obvious doorway, just jump up to this area right here. Gain that immediate height advantage and that element of surprise. And it's a really similar story from the mid lane area here. Instead of taking the window, which they may be covering, you can also jump and catch a ledge right here, and you can get to the second story from that side. So there's just so many different approaches and ways to get into that I really like. But I also like using a jump spot to get out of this building because with this little line of sight right here, you'll often have people just chilling and pre-aiming that doorway. And again, you don't want to expose yourself there. You have no cover. A great way to get through there without them seeing you is to simply jump up to this area right here. And then you're able to push up freely and they think that nobody's come through that door, but you can either close that gap on them just to get into close quarters, or you can flank them entirely. It's up to you. Now in that same area, there's another one of these rock formations where it's not immediately obvious that you can get on top of them, and normally you wouldn't expect to be able to do that, but you can jump from this side to get on top of this rock formation, and it actually gives you a nice line of sight to that window across there. and also to that first spot I showed you on that map. This is a great way to take those players out, and they're almost never looking onto this side of the map. They don't think there's a line of sight there. But another thing you can do with that rock formation is if you are pushing toward the enemy spawn, coming out this window and coming around this corner, that is a very obvious choke point, and you'll often have enemies just pre-aiming that, getting ready to pre-fire you. So just an alternative to maybe take them off guard is if you jump onto the window ledge first. From there, you can jump to this little ledge that's on this rock formation, and then from that, you can mantle on top of the rocks, and you just might be able to use that to take those players off guard that are simply expecting you to come around that obvious corner. And finally, let's move on to Asilo, and I only have one non-obvious jump spot to show you guys, and this is from the mid-map area. It's really easy to get to the second floor on this side of the map by simply jumping on all that clutter and then jumping up to the balcony here. This is one that I didn't pick up on immediately, so I'm sure there's at least a few of you that are unaware of this. Unfortunately, we don't have the same sort of jump spot on the other side to get to the other balcony though, which is a bit unfortunate. It would be nice if we had a jump spot from this side as well. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for part 2 of some of the best jump spots that I've found so far in Modern Warfare 2. And that is going to wrap this up for now, but as I continue to find more and more spots and as more maps are added into the game over time, I may end up revisiting this in the future and sharing even more spots with you. And with that, I am curious to hear from you guys in the comments down below. How many of the spots in this video were you unaware of before watching the video? Also, if you guys missed the first part of this series, I will leave a link to that in the description down below. I've covered a bunch of jump spots on the other maps in Modern Warfare 2. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.